You ready to
Staying
live it
alive.
up?
I am ready.
Live
Life is
it
still
up.
alive.
We're living.
Livin', vibing and livin'.
We lived, everyone. Let's we're at the Ng-Conf 2022 speaker submission office hours.
Office
This
hours.
is the place where you come to figure out how to get your talk selected. It's not cheating, is it?
No. I mean, it's not cheating. We do take we're gonna put in our advice, and also we're gonna put in our PayPal addresses for you to send money. So
yeah,
it's not cheating to buy your way. And what happened? We lost Aaron. Did we lose Aaron? I think we lost Aaron. Suddenly, Aaron's gone. Is he back?
He's back.
He's back.
Sorry, dude. Internet's today. Yeah, it's not cheating.
It's not cheating.
No. It isn't cheating. You want me to quickly share this on my Twitter real quick? Get some people on.
That's a good idea. I'm going to do the same thing. Tweet it out.
Ng-Conf 2022. Want to get help preparing your talk ideas? Please join our office hours, and we'll answer your questions, help your chances at getting ye old Ng-Conf talk selected. Tweet. Hey man, I just tweeted it out, bro.
Okay. I'm doing the same thing. I'm sure my tweet was more entertaining than yours.
Why? What did you say?
I said the really boring stuff. Super boring. Want to speak? Come now.
Live in person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I see it. All right. So our hope is that we get some questions in the YouTube chats. We got 22 people watching. Yo, Kyle's here. Joe, you got your first compliment on your beard, bro.
I did. What?
Kyler says love the beard.
Thanks,
Joe.
Kyler.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love the beard, but it's there.
Does your wife love a beard?
She don't care one way or the other. Indifferent. Yeah. All right, Aaron, how do I get my talk accepted to Ng-Conf 2022? I want my talk accepted. How do I do that?
Okay. We have some tips. We don't have all the tips, but we got some tips that we've learned from the past. Everyone should submit their best submission. Some people are like, I don't belong here. I'm not as good as James's beard. Yeah, like they like they want to be next level, but they aren't convinced they're next level. That's not the energy you should write your talk with. When you write your talk title and your talk description, you need to have a different type of energy. All right, like think about the energy of like people who just come at you where they're over the top and they're just trying to convince you about something. That's the energy that you want to come at the conference organizers with.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a conference organizer, Joe, let's just open up to the peeps a little bit. Let's tell the kids what they want to know. We're trying to build a lineup that people go, yeah, that's the talk that they need to hear. That's the talk the community needs in 2022 about Angular 13 or standalone components, or the world's greatest ng template forms driven patterns or whatever. Like it needs to be a solid submission. At the same time, don't go too far. Joe, give some examples of people going too far with talk titles. I got a couple.
Too far with talk titles. Oh, geez. You go first. You started this off.
This, it's not getting selected. If you do this, even if it's the greatest talk ever, it's not getting picked. lions and tigers and insert something here.
Right.
Oh my.
Three items with plus oh my. That talk title gets rejected every time.
It's not getting selected, yo.
Yep.
Don't do that one.
Yep.
Instead, realize it needs to, like, the title has to be perfect and the description has to be perfect. I want you to imagine Joe and I, we're trying to read 500 of these things. It's Joe and I and a team of people. It's not just Joe and I. Right. That would be not inclusive. We try and make it inclusive.
It's about usually six people do the selections. Around six people do the selections.
Yeah. So I want you to imagine that we've got a team there, and we have to read 500 things. If we spent 30 seconds per talk title, divided by 500, that's 250 minutes, which is how many hours?
6 hours, 4 hours.
That's 4 hours just to read the titles, not even to make any decisions, right?
Yep.
So your talk title is really important. Like, it's really, really important because on the scale of things, if it's like lions and tigers and it's just like fail, move to the next talk because we got 500 of these things to get through. So you need your title to be the thing. And the most important part, in my opinion, is don't have a bad title. Like, a title with 50 words in it, that's a bad title. You agree, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Anyway, so have energy. Have the energy of, like, the most convincing person ever. Don't have the energy of I don't belong, because none of us belong. Joe and I don't feel like we belong either. But that's not the energy you're going to write this talk title with. Like, get in a good headspace. If you run and get confident, go run first. If you get confident with a nice piece of pizza in your hand, like, go get some pizza and then sit down and write this talk title. That's one.
So there's a really important tip in there, and that is that, and I think this is kind of interesting. I think the hardest rounds to get through, because you have to do it in multiple rounds, right? You have to take a big, you have to cut it down, you cut it down again. Usually there's something like 4 rounds, right?
Yeah.
The hardest rounds to get through are the first round and the last round.
Yeah.
The first round is hard because you don't get to have everything about your talk be understood well enough to have it be truly weighted against everything else. So for that reason, there's an art to having the things in your talk to get it through the first round. A really compelling title is by far the number one thing. And topic, right? Topic and title are the number one things to get through the first round. Your text may get reviewed if it's not, and some of your text is almost foreshortened, like your summary. But if you write a 4-page summary, that's counterproductive. Don't write a summary of your talk that's 4 pages long. If you can keep everything to, like, I think there's usually a summary and then notes to the organizers. If you keep your summary, because that's what's going to go on the website, to something like 5 sentences or less, and your notes to organizers to something like 3 sentences or less, much better chance that 100% of what you write gets written, and therefore you get judged and evaluated better against the other talks. So that's something to get through that first round. I also think there's a way to go against what you said. You said what your best talk is. I think there's also an art to not necessarily doing what you think is the best talk, because sometimes what you aren't necessarily thinking is going to be your best talk will actually be the talk that's needed, right? And so having great ideas and coming up with, so I've done in the past, I've submitted a couple of versions of the same talk, right? This version I'm going to focus on this, and this one I'm going to focus on that. And it was the second one, the one that maybe for me I didn't think was as great, that actually spoke to the organizers of the conference, and then they chose that talk. Or a second idea. I put in this is the thing I really want to do, but I also think that this could be valuable. So I put in my B game, my plan B, and it was plan B that got selected. So I think there's also something to be said for, putting in your talks as well, even if you don't feel like, man, this is the most compelling talk, I know this is going to get selected, or they're going to be idiots if they don't select this talk. That's okay. But if you phone it in, that gets obvious. If you just throw in 10 ideas, that gets if you're just shotgunning in 10 ideas, that gets obvious. We like multiple submissions, but if the minute that we can see that you have submitted just a bunch of garbage, hoping that something gets through and not giving it any time, then your whole name and all of your submissions pretty much go into the trash bin.
Yeah.
So you have to put care into each submission.
Yeah. So submit more than one, but if you submit 16, we're going to pick the best one that we like. And the others we're just going to say no to the rest. And it's just not fair to say, hey, we're going to put this person in all 16 categories.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and then we have to sit there and be like, oh, yeah. So if you submit 16, it doesn't help really your odds. We're going to pick the one of yours that we sounds the best, that we feel is the best for the community and that has the best content. And the rest are just going to get rejected. So 16 doesn't hurt, but it also doesn't help.
Every submission needs the same quantity of care. So you need to bring your A game for the amount of time and energy and attention you give to each submission, even if you're putting in a submission that you don't think is maybe the best talk, because you just never know what's either going to speak to the organizers. You know, every year we have a different set of organizers, different opinions, different inputs on what's going to speak to people. And so you just never know that you might have a talk that you think is just incredibly uninteresting, but you think that you can speak eloquently or adequately about it. Or maybe somebody could, something that somebody asked you the other day that you know something about, a talk about that could really be the talk that needs to be up on stage. So,
yeah.
Let's talk. Do you want to talk hard about talk titles?
Yeah. Yes. Talk titles. Not too few words, not too many, right? Like
not too few, not too many.
Yeah. Like lions, like don't. It needs to be. We used to would have picked like really artsy times. Like we had a Star Wars theme year and talk people that crafted their talk titles around Star Wars. It wasn't picked because of that, but it also didn't hurt. Now we're less likely to lean in on those. We're more looking for the best talk, whether it leans into the theme or not. We're more interested in the talks.
Yeah. So I think to categorize or to quantify that, it's if the talk title is clear, that's far more important than being clever. Clever is okay, but don't sacrifice clarity for cleverness, right?
Yeah.
Never sacrifice clarity for cleverness. So I've seen some really brilliant. There was one of my favorite talk titles of all time was on a concurrent threading, and the talk title was from Robert Frost's poem, A Road Divided into Wood, and I Chose the Path Less Traveled. The talk title was A Road Diverged in the Wood, and I Took Both Paths. Right? It was clever, but it also spoke to what the talk title was about. I thought that was one of the most clever ones, but it also conveyed what it was about multi-threading and concurrency. So, but never sacrifice clarity for cleverness.
Yeah.
Can't be too long. You can't have 20 words in your talk title, right?
Yeah.
It can't be too
for a lot
short.
of reasons.
Yeah, being vague and mysterious is rarely. It can sometimes work, but it's rarely going to work. So you can't be too short.
The magical land of Angular components.
Right.
That literally says nothing about your talk, other than that you might be talking about something to do with components.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything that's nebulous like that, you want to have. It needs to be, like Joe said, it needs to be clear. Don't sacrifice clarity for anything.
Yeah. A good thing to do is to poll people that other developers, and say, what do you think of this talk title or that talk title? Right. That's a good way to validate some title ideas. Yeah. We have in the past picked a talk and then asked the submitter to change their title. Right. We've loved the talk so much, but saw problems in the title. So it's not the end all be all. The title isn't, but I think, in my opinion, the title is by far the most important piece to getting through a CFP. It's been my experience when submitting and my experience when selecting is that the title is, you should spend at least 50% of your emotional energy on your title.
Yeah. I agree.
Do we have Q&A place where people can ask you? What else should we say about titles? And then we got the Q&A up so people can ask questions. We do have some chat too. I don't know if we have. Okay, and Ankita, I apologize for the butchering your name. Talk title length submissions, right?
Yeah.
So I would say 5 to 10 words.
5 to 10 words. Yeah.
Is that
the best ones are going to be 4 to 7, but 5 to 10 is a good place to go, right?
Okay. Yeah. We got some other questions, but let's finish up going over talk titles. What else to say about talk titles?
Talk title needs to have the right energy because, like you said, that's how you get through round 1, right?
Yeah.
In round one, I want you to imagine there's 500 and we got to get it down to 150. And that's round one. That's round one, like getting it from 500 to 150. That's tough. And we're going quick. And the whole thing takes about 8 hours, start to finish, which is a ton of time to sit there and look at this. And that's what your talk title's got to get you through. Okay. So bring the right energy.
On the note of anti-patterns, along with the blank and blank and blank, oh my, definitely an anti-pattern for a talk title. Another one I think is something lessons learned. The words lessons learned, those two words itself are definitely an anti-pattern. It's not exciting. It's too boring.
Let me give you a couple examples of Joe's lessons learned thing. And I wanted to bring this up. I was waiting, but you brought it up. So this is good. I want you to imagine someone says, building apps at Google, lessons learned. That's cool because I can have a Googler be giving a talk, but we really don't like the lessons learned talks. Like what I want you to do is I don't want you to spend 20 minutes telling a story about the lesson you learned necessarily. Why don't you just pick the thing that you learned and give a talk about that? That would be my lessons learned thing. So if the thing you learned was, and you have this big story that encapsulates the lesson, right? And the story has context and it's meaningful. It's most meaningful to you, but it's a meaningful story. But what was the lesson learned? To be accepting of others, to write your Angular components this way. I don't know what that was, but give a talk about that thing. Don't necessarily give a talk about the thing that you learned. Don't give a talk about the story of what you learned in the context. Just talk about the thing itself, right?
Yep.
Teach the lesson rather than tell the story. So.
Yeah. A good criteria is the listener should walk away with something that's useful to them.
Yeah.
Right.
I say that, but some of the best talks are like Sam Julien's soft skills talk, where he just stood on the stage with like a Buc-ee's, like a cold brew coffee, and he just stood there with his lumberjack shirt on and talked us through a conversation he had with his boss. That was a lessons learned or an experience talk.
Right.
But most talks don't fit into that, just so you know. So, yeah.
All right. Should we go into some of these questions?
Yeah. Kyler says, how long should the talk itself be?
Yeah. So we are going to be doing lightning talks, but we're not going to do submissions for lightning talks. So there are going to be opportunities for attendees to give 5-minute lightning talks, but mostly we're not doing submissions for lightning talks. That being said, if you have the most magical idea for a 5-minute talk, it's still fine to submit it. Our typical talk length is 20 minutes, right?
When you go to submit your talk, you pick from a drop down: 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or 1 hour workshop. Like, we give you a range. You don't tell us how long your talk is. We tell you. Now, you could, in the extra notes, like, let's say you have a talk, you're like, I could do that in 5 minutes, but it would also be 20. Just put that in your additional notes. Like, hey, I could give this talk as a 5-minute if you want me to. And we've actually done that in the past. Like, we've seen a 20-minute talk and we're like, nah, we're not going to do 20 minutes on that, but we would do 5. And like, we really want the talk. So we're like, hey, let's just cram it into one of the 5-minute spots, ask the speaker to do it in 5. And typically they'll say yes. So if you think it fits in both, add that into your notes, but we tell you how long it has to be, Kyler.
Right. So right now we've got, these are the 4 options: 5, 20, 1 hour, and 2 hour. And 99% of what we're going to select is 20 minutes. So what you should be doing is aiming for a 20-minute talk, right?
Yeah.
There is a possibility you've got this brilliant idea for a 5-minute talk. And certainly if you have some ideas on 1 hour workshops and 2 hour workshops, we're going to look at those. But we haven't decided how many of all those other things we're actually going to accept. 20-minute talks is the meat of the conference. So that's the ideal talk length, is to do a 20-minute talk. It's long enough. 20 minutes is a great talk length. It's long enough to cover something, but short enough that you have to be brief about it, and you can't spend 45 minutes walking through some code that people are going to get bored over, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, when we started Ng-Conf, conferences had 45-minute talks. That was how conferences did it. And we did not like that conferences gave you so much time to talk about other things, to tell jokes, to tell stories. So Ng-Conf was started with this really out of the box scheduling of 20-minute talks, which is not long enough. Most speakers are like, that was over before it started. And it's because it is. We don't give you time to wind up, introduce yourself for 5 minutes, and still convey a lot of content. If each of your slides is on the screen for 30 seconds, then you're looking at about 30 slides. Like, it's really not a lot of time to do a 20-minute talk. So
plenty of time to live code, plenty of time to code something up, or plenty of time to talk through soft skills, hard technical stuff, plenty of time to cover all those things. But you will have to work to keep it brief.
Yeah. I gave a talk one time at Ng-Conf called Chrome Apps with Angular and Node. That was a good talk. But how are you going to talk about Chrome Apps and Angular and Node in 20 minutes? Like, you can't.
That's tough.
And so your talk needs to be about one of those things. So also, don't try and boil the ocean in 20 minutes. Like, scope your talk to one thing, right?
Yeah. Now, it's not to say that you can't give a 20-minute talk and cover some meshing of multiple technologies, but be aware that your talk title, whatever, your idea does have to fit into 20 minutes. So have confidence you can fit into 20 minutes.
Yeah, we have rejected talks in the past because they're like, there'll be something like, it's just too much. It's like Angular plus Tailwind plus GraphQL plus, and you're just like,
it sounded like a really interesting, great talk, but we knew that it wouldn't fit into the time allotted.
20 minutes is going to be a mess. So you've put too much in here, right? It's like a carrot cake. It needs to be balanced. You can't put raisins and coconut and carrots and pineapple and nuts. Like, have some of that, but not too much, right?
Yep. Okay, next question. This is from James Henry. Hi, gents. Will you be releasing subject areas you are very likely or unlikely to accept talks on? I'm going to say the short answer to that is no.
Yeah, no.
We could probably give some suggestions on some hot areas that are hot right now, but I think there's also something to keep in mind. The hot areas, the popular areas, are probably going to get more talk submissions. So I want to give two pieces of advice here. One is, like, as an example, I think micro front ends is a very hot topic right now. So I think people want to hear about that. So if you throw a talk submission in about micro front ends, it would probably easily get through the first round, unless it was like a terrible one, just because of the subject, right? You're going to pass through because of the subject matter. You're going to pass through the first round probably. But as an example, I just recently was like doing some random coding and found something interesting about using abstract classes in TypeScript. Abstract classes have been around for so long. They're not hot. They're not interesting. And yet it's like this old classic, and they're not even used a lot. But I thought it was really interesting what I figured out. And so I put together a talk and gave a talk at a meetup. I had a lot of passion for what I was doing. I thought it was really interesting. I enjoyed giving the talk. A talk submission on something completely, I won't say random like that, but that's a topic that it might be the right topic. So don't worry too much about topic. What else do we have to say about topics, Aaron? What other advice? Do's and don'ts?
We're not all on Twitter, but look at what's happening right now. Like, Angular 13 just came out. TS-Lint just went away. NGRX is getting every day bigger. What else is happening? The Angular CLI continues to decimate every other build out there. Angular material gets stronger and faster. The component libraries around Angular get better. There's a lot happening right now. Just give a talk on that. Don't try and template forms is resurging, right? I didn't know that until they did. So just look at what's happening, give a talk about that. Or if you're like, hey, something should be happening that isn't, let's have a talk about that. An example, let's say that you wrote a library to migrate people from TS-Lint to ES-Lint, and you're super cool. How did you do that? Well, maybe give a talk about that, James Henry. But yeah, that's one option. But yeah, look what's happening. Also, if you're if you work at big enterprise, if you work at if you're solving other big problems, or if you focus on performance and you're like Angular and Flame charts, you understand something better than anyone else. That's your talk title. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so pick something you know. We don't really have a lot that we wouldn't select.
Yeah.
We won't select lessons learned.
Yeah. We will select a lesson learned, but not the, let me just tell you a story about some stuff that we did that I thought was interesting.
At my company, here's what we learned. Yeah, we're not going to pick that.
I think another thing to consider is that Angular plus a technology can be very cool. It can also be dangerous, right? So like Tailwind's very popular. So a talk on Angular and Tailwind could be interesting. The problem is you have to, you can't just do, here's how to use Angular and Tailwind together, because that's too generic and too bland. There's a lot of content out there. So that a talk like that, this generic, could get through if it was really strong, or there was a few other submissions and we really thought that we wanted to throw that too. But something about, hey, when using Angular with Tailwind, here's how to do this specific thing, or here's this, interesting thing to do. That one can, Angular plus some other, how to use Angular with other technology. And I think that's kind of goes into a second question Ace Patrick asked, is Ng-Conf only about Angular? So I'm going to change that question into, does a talk have to include Angular in the talk?
No, I'll give you a couple examples in the past, and probably what I'm going to try and get this year. So like VS Code, when it was new and it wasn't really an editor that everyone used, we said, hey, Microsoft, come give a talk about VS Code, right? And that's nothing to do with Angular. It was it was an IDE talk, and they killed it. This year, I really want Fleet by Jetstorm to do the exact same thing, because I think Fleet will be big.
JetBrains.
I said Jetstorm. I meant JetBrains.
Combine WebStorm and JetBrains together. I like it. JetStorm.
Sorry.
Sounds like a really cool novel. Maybe the next John Wick movie.
Yep. So yeah, like it doesn't have to be, but and we also have soft skills talks. So some people in the community really have nailed soft skills talks. Like a really good one is mental health. Anything around mental health right now, self-care, self-love, self-forgiving or acceptance, or creating safe environments. Just really anything that's great about community. How do you grow community? How do you start a community? Like anything that's a soft skills talk, those also don't have to do with Angular, and we've had many of those in the past. So
yeah. A couple of things I think about not having Angular in your talk. Definitely not a non-starter. Consider though that this is Ng-Conf. So I think the thing you should ask yourself is, am I going to talk about something that is likely valuable to know by most, if not all, Angular developers? So here's two examples. If I tell you why, let's say I did a talk just about Tailwind and about why utility first CSS frameworks are great. If I'm a developer in the audience and I don't use that, and I'm never going to use it, understanding it could be valuable to me, because it might help me in what the CSS that I am doing. At least I know that it's there. Now I understand it better. But if I give a talk on how to use Angular with .NET to do some very specific thing, anybody who's not working on a .NET project is going to have completely zero to take away from that. Depending on how you do it. Now, if you talk about how Angular matches up with RESTful in a particular way, and so you're using .NET as an example, or if there's something about .NET that's useful for people to know, right? There's something new that's out in .NET, and we might see this thing in other. I want to talk about contravariance, which would be a weird topic to talk about, but I'm going to talk about contravariance in .NET. Well, that could be valuable for people to know, even if you're using some specific tool. So the question to ask yourself, and we will ask ourselves this question on every talk, is this applicable to at least 85%, valuable to 85% or more of the audience? If it's not valuable to them, then we have to reject it. We can't take here's a talk on .NET with Angular, and here's a talk on Java with Angular, and here's the talk on Rails with Angular, and here's the talk on Node with Angular. We have to have 5 talks to cover something. We won't accept those.
Yeah. The other thing that's tough about like Angular Razor templates and server-side rendering. Well, honestly, I'd like to hear that talk, but most of the audience doesn't work with .NET. So a Razor templates talk doesn't help. And so even if it's a good talk, if 80% of the audience is going to trail off because they don't get it, then we can't really make it a thing. You know?
Right.
So,
but doing, so that spawned an idea. Last year we had Ward Bell talk about why template forms are the best forms, and it was a very against the grain talk, right? And a lot of people may not ever use template forms, but it's still valuable for them to understand. So a talk that's about rethinking something or redoing something or re-examining something could be very valuable. And as an idea here, why server-side rendering is how you should be doing your Angular. That would be a weird idea, and it sounds completely wrong to me, but that could be a talk that we would put up. If you say, I can make a compelling case on why server-side rendering is how you should do Angular, right? Not just the initial render, but we're going to go back to Razor-based templates, and that sounds weird, but that could get up on stage if you made a compelling case. So that's another interesting one. One thing I want to put in on soft skills, that's usually, we can only put so many soft skills talks up. So it's usually an area that has a lot of competition for it. So keep that in mind. If you're only going to submit one talk and you submit it on soft skills, you might have we usually get 10 or 15 amazing soft skills talks ideas. And we have to, that's the hard one, the last round. It's we can only put up 2 or 3 soft skills talks. And so we have to choose 3 out of 15 amazing ones. Soft skills, CSS, and probably this year, micro front ends are going to be the 3 things that are going to get the most or design.
I think performance in the vein of micro front ends, but I think performance may be
another hot one.
Yeah, several years ago, maybe 4, it was state management. Everyone wanted to talk about state management. Everyone wanted to talk about state management. I think that's been solved. I think performance is going to be what we focus on this year, whether it's micro front ends or other type of profiling, or how to be architects, or how to just level up your performance profiling and writing Angular in better ways. So yeah, that's what I would suspect. What was I going to say? I also kind of wanted to talk you through how the talk selection goes, just so you can kind of understand. Anytime you're trying to sell someone, if you can understand what's in their head, it's easier to sell them. So I'll open up a little bit of the psyche of what's happening with Joe and I and the rest of the talk selectors. So the night before, we take every talk and we put it into, we'll come down to 10 or 15 categories. And so let's say, a bunch of people are submitting on state management. We'll categorize all the state management talks. And we'll categorize all the CSS
all the testing,
performance talks. Yeah, exactly. Testing. We'll put them all up into a bunch of categories. Tooling, third-party stuff. Yes, exactly. And then when we go through the talk selection, it's hey, round 1, state management. Let's just filter out all the state management talks, and we gotta narrow this down to about a 4th. And so we spend an hour and a half, maybe 2, on that, whittling that down. Then we go to the next category. So we go by categories. So just understand that we are going to categorize your talk. And so that's one thing. The next thing is, this lasts for hours. And the most emotional part is the end. The longer it goes, the more emotional it gets, because at first it's just man, there's a ton of low-hanging fruit. You still feel bad saying no to them, but it's just lions and tigers and something. Oh my God, not. 15 lessons learned, gone. So round 1 can be kind of easy, but once we get to round 2, 3, and 4, it's really sucky. Because I'm picking between 100 talks that all deserve to be on the stage, but I can only pick 15 of them. It's really, really hard. So you do need to have clarity, and it needs to be concise, and it needs to have the energy of a talk that belongs on the stage, right? It needs to have the energy of the talk, and it needs to apply to most of the people that come, and if not all. Okay. Yeah. So those are some other things that need to happen. So yeah.
I think one of the most valuable pieces of advice we can give, or tips we can give right now, is that we would love to help you.
Oh yeah.
So if you're looking at, organizing now, what we don't want you to do is come to us and say, hey, is this one going to get through? We're not here to help you pass through rounds 1 or 2. As far as just give me the insider track on, is this going to get through or not? what we are here to help you with is mentor you through what it means to put together a talk. So specifically, if you've never given a talk before, or you've never gotten through one, or even never submitted, we want to help you through that. If you have submitted and you feel like you still could use some help, right? Like, I just can't come up with a good, like, we're not going to come up with a good talk title for you, right? That requires your level of interest and care in the topic to come up with the good talk title. But what we can do is coach you through the process of picking a talk, picking a title, how long to make the submission. We would love to help you out and mentor you out with that. So we actually have a lot of people, a lot of volunteers that would love to help people get through the CFP process as far as crafting their submissions. So we'd love to help you out with that. If you would like any help, reach out to us. info@ng-conf.org is a great way to reach out. Reach out to us over Twitter, and we would love to help you out with that. Just keep in mind that it's all very volunteer basis and limited to the time that people have available. So we may not be able to give you as much time as you would like. We certainly can't write your submission for you.
Yeah. So and someone asked Richard, I'm going to answer your question, and everyone else watching. To submit, you just go to the website ng-conf.org. Click on Submit CFP, takes you to the form, and you're just going to walk through this. You can submit multiple talks through here. So feel free to submit more than one. And by the time you're done, everything's in there. So that's how you will submit. I will say, as you come to our website, you're like, what is this? A grim scene unfolds before you. Dark coffee pools on the floor, dripping slow. It reads like a D&D game because if you look at the theme for Ng-Conf next year.
Mike just asked about the theme.
Yeah. The theme is puzzles, mysteries, and riddles. So that is what it will be about. It doesn't mean having a cutesy talk title will get you selected. Doesn't mean you can't make something that fits that theme, though. Yeah. So it needs to be balanced. Don't go to the theme instead of what you're trying to talk about. But if it works, then it works. Yep. And I actually kind of want to talk about that, Joe. I kind of wanted to tell people, hey, write your talk title. Write it 5 times.
5 times.
The title, just the title. No, you write the description 5 times. And read the 5 different options, coming up from different angles, right? And show some friends. Have them tell you the one they like the best, and that's what I think you should do. So,
yep, you could tweet at Aaron and I and say, "What do you think of this talk title?" Keep in mind that our personal opinions vary. Like, I've got a very subjective opinion about talk titles, so I might steer you wrong when I say I like that title over that title because it's the second title that might speak to the other people that are choosing talks. So do keep that in mind, that we just have opinions. Right. When it comes day of, I could tell you all day long, that's an amazing talk. I'm sure that's going to get through the first round, 2 rounds, and be completely wrong. And it gets kicked out, in the first round. I can be completely wrong about that because it speaks to me. Last year, I was so bully on Tailwind. I was pushing through every Tailwind talk for at least the second round, if not the third, because I was just dying to have Tailwind content. You just never know what's in the mind of.
I watched it happen.
Selector. You saw it. Aaron saw it.
I watched it happen. But I did that a few years before. I was like, man, reactive programming. Mm-hmm. Not enough people are talking about it. And I think Joe and Kip were like, what is this? And I'm like, trust me, it's a big thing. So do you care if I put up another question, Joe?
No, go for it.
So Craig says, hey, is there weighting given to whether speakers have to travel internationally? No. We don't weigh that.
The only thing that I would say there is if we end up selecting all 30 speakers from international, we do understand that it's more often that international speakers get canceled, their flights get canceled, right? They can't travel, and in the age of COVID, that could be an issue. So we may end up having to to deal with that if we ended up with every talk. But no, we love travel. New Zealand is, I know, it's the most expensive place to travel from. If we select a New Zealand speaker, they're the most costly. We don't care.
That's fine. Yeah. As a conference organizer, your product is your talks, and so It doesn't matter for us. That's the number one thing we're here for. So if I have to pick between donuts at the break or a New Zealand speaker, we pick the New Zealand speaker, right? Every single time. So yeah, good question though. Brocky has a question. Oh yeah. You did miss
covered that. Missed the theme.
Puzzles,
yeah. The theme's subtle. It's a mystery. What is the theme? Yeah. I don't know what the theme is. The theme's a mystery.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I think that's all we're at on questions. So
no, we got one more.
Where is it?
Peter O'Connor. I'd like to give a talk, and I feel like I'm really good at teaching / communicating, but I don't know where to find an idea that others would like to hear. I always feel like everything's been said. Okay, so I have a really strong opinion about this, Peter. For practically 10 years, I made my living on just teaching through Pluralsight, right? I was just teaching. 100% of the time, I only taught things that somebody else had already taught. I said things somebody else had already said, right? But as a learner, think about, and maybe you're a little bit different than me, but when I decide I want to learn something, like I decide I'm going to learn RxJS, right? When I decided I'm going to really learn RxJS, I didn't go and find one RxJS source of information, do that thing, and then I was done. I watched 4 different courses on RxJS. I read 20 different blogs, and a lot of the blogs said the same thing because different things speak to different people in different ways. So again, like my example of a talk about abstract classes, that content, that topic, abstract classes and object-oriented programming, has been given so many times, 100 times, 1,000 times, certainly more than 1,000 times, tens of thousands of times. There's got to be tens of thousands of blogs about abstract classes, right? It's a topic that's been around since the 70s, since OO was invented. And yet I thought that was and I gave a talk and people seemed to enjoy it for the most part. Don't worry about, never think, has this been said by somebody else? Never think that. That should never be your concern. Instead, you should ask, do I care about the topic, right? Am I interested in what it is? Can I communicate clearly about it? Don't even worry if you're the expert. Don't worry about going up and saying something that somebody else who with more experience or knowledge is going to be like, no, that's not the right way to do it. Don't worry about that. Just, do you have passion? Can you communicate clearly, and can you define it into something that's going to be of value to people, right? Wrap it up. And I think a great way to validate those ideas is to give talks at local meetups, brown bags at work, little lunch talks at work.
I kind of wanted to add on top of that, Joe.
Yeah, chip in, Aaron.
It's a different take and kind of talking in a different direction, but as you were talking, it reminded me, if you're a first-time speaker, or if you're not confident that you're ready for Ng-Conf stage, because it's a big stage. I'm not talking about the size of the stage. I'm talking about, it's a big conference, right? Mm-hmm. We actually pay for a professional speaker coach to sit with you, okay? So if you're worried, I can't submit, I don't belong, I'm not good enough, I need help, just know, most of our best talks, they sat down with the coach, and the coach said, change ABC. They changed ABC, and the talk got way better. So we invest in our speakers. Like, it's really, really important that the speakers feel supported, that the speakers are included, that they're made to feel safe and empowered. We're here to make that happen. So if this is your first, if you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, just tell us and we'll get you the coaching or the assistance you need to help get your talk ready to be submitted. But once it's picked, we're going to make sure we're invested in making sure you're successful. So just know you've got a whole team of people. So don't hold back your submission because you're worried about not being able to get ready. We'll help you get there. So yeah.
Yeah. So to wrap up Peter's question, never worry about things that others have said. You don't have to have something novel. Your take and your approach is always going to be novel. It could be your own spin on the topic. So, yeah,
I agree.
All right, we got more questions. Do you want to go more questions?
Yeah.
More? All right. Does it matter if I submit a talk that's similar to what I already presented elsewhere? No, not similar, but we don't want the same exact talk. If it's already been at a major conference somewhere, we don't want that same exact talk on our, it's already out there. It's already out there for the world to see. So don't give the same talk you've given. Similar talk, that's fine. A new iteration on it.
If you gave it at a meetup, we don't care.
Yeah, certainly don't care about a meetup. But if that talk is already out there on YouTube, on the internet, no, then there's not much reason to have it out there again. We want something novel. We want to bring, when I say novel things, right? Like Peter just asked, what if it's been said before? That's fine. It's just, have you said it? You know, and you might be iterating on some idea, and you might have a new version of something that you have done. Like I've iterated a lot on various pieces of content I've done. I talk a lot about testing. So I've given very similar talks on a lot of different things about testing. It doesn't mean I wouldn't give that same talk again because it changes enough over time. So you kind of have to ask that question. But if you're like, hey, I gave this talk at this other major conference, I'll just give the same talk again. I don't have to prepare it. I can reuse it the second time. We're definitely not interested in that.
Yeah.
I would say a caveat to that would be, I gave this talk that applies to an entirely different industry or even like majorly different section of the developer market, right? I gave a talk at a blockchain conference. Maybe we would want that talk if it was something amazing that applied to Angular. Maybe we would want that.
Yeah. JVA wants to know, what about turning a Medium post into a talk? I would say, if it's your Medium post, I think you should do it. Might not be great to give someone else's Medium post, but I don't think it's bad to get inspiration from someone else's blog. Like certainly most of the best talks got inspired by the rest of us, and so there's nothing wrong with grabbing inspiration with.
Yeah. So if you take your Medium post to turn a talk, of course, if you read somebody else's Medium post, and again, this is about what it means to take and create your own spin and do your own content. You read somebody else's Medium post, and you're like, this would be a great talk. This person isn't giving it as a talk. This content would be a great talk, but not, it's not the exact thing. Take your angle, your spin on that topic and turn that into a talk. Fantastic idea.
Right? Fantastic idea.
But make it yours. Make sure that it's your content, your talk, your spin on the thing. Don't just parrot. Don't get up there and read somebody else's talk, right? Give your talk.
Yeah. Okay. All right, yo. We gotta wrap this up. We got some extra stuff to take. Yeah, after this, we got some extra stuff to take on. Anyway, everybody, if you have any questions on Twitter, you can reach out to Joe and I. Let me just add a banner on here at Aaron Frost, and you're at Joe Eames, right? Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph, not Joseph Eames.
Yeah.
Joe's got taken.
So if you need us to, if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, DM us some of your talk ideas. Let us know. We're crazy buried in work right now, but we'll do our best to try and give you some feedback and coach you in the right direction. Certainly, you can reach out to past speakers and say, hey, that's one of your thoughts on this talk title. I know Mike Brockey's spoken several times, and James Henry's a past speaker. So some of the people in the chat could even help out. But definitely don't be shy to reach out to other people who have been there before and ask them for help, because typically that's what would make them feel the best. So yeah, is getting back. So anyway, submit your talks. We're going to pick right after the New Year's. So talk selection. When does it end, Joe?
January 5th.
Closes at December 31st. Yeah, so it closes on New Year's Mountain Time. Yeah. So you have the whole month of December to finalize your talk ideas and get it submitted.
Yep.
So yeah. But reach out to us if you need help. Thanks for getting this going, Joe. Thanks to everyone who came for being here and asking questions and being part of this. And we will catch you. Hopefully we catch all of you at the conference. So see you later.
Cheers.